crowd?
Yeah, I think so. Looks like there are there's always get the feedback on my phone there. It looks like there's a fair few people all signed in. Those that are signed in, can you give me a little wave or a hello, please, in the chat? Oh, yeah, all right, Billy. You're way ahead of the game. I love that. Hi, Jim, as well. Thank you, everyone, for joining this show. It's all about communities today. I'm delighted to be joined by Scott Richardson from Harrington Starr. Firstly, Scott, happy birthday to Harrington Starr. 10 years yesterday, wasn't it?
Yeah, 10 years on Sunday.
Oh, so, okay.
Yeah,
big party.
Yeah, as much as we could, we celebrated with possibly not the healthiest way, but we all got a takeaway on thanks to the business. So we got a little Just Eat voucher, and we had all sorts being shared from Chinese pizzas, curries, and vegan moussaka as well, which was
really nice eclectic mix there. So yeah, it's 10 years down is incredible, really. I think it's a great milestone for any recruitment business. And how many years have you been there out of those 10?
7 on the 1st of July. So
and I just
11 months, yeah.
And look, all of those nice things that you just said about Toby and the business, he just missed because he's just come on live now, Toby. So, Toby, I can see you're watching and you're listening. Happy birthday to Harrington Starr. Congratulations on a brilliant job that you've done now. But as ever, thank you everyone who's here. Ask questions down below, chat in the chat bit, and we're just going to run with this. We're going to be talking about communities. I think one of the big things that I've seen during lockdown has been, I don't want to say pivoting, but companies have managed to take offline communities, bring them online in a way that I didn't think was imaginable, and the scope that they've been able to produce brilliant events, and the reach that they've been able to get has been outstanding. But one thing that seems to be common with it is that the companies that have done it brilliantly well are the ones who already kind of had a community prior to lockdown. It hasn't been manufactured. I think I can see it with the Lonely Marketers, to be honest. We kind of, there's always conversations, and there was a community, whether it was online or that, but that's only been accelerated in this period now. So, Scott, firstly, thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, no, pleasure.
And can you just talk me through a little bit about, the Harrington Starr journey of creating community, because you do so much stuff. But firstly, what was it that kind of kicked it off and thought we're going down this route? And then what steps did you take to, build it? Yeah,
so, I mean, since I joined, like I mentioned, 2013, we were quite a bit smaller than we were now. But even then, there was no kind of dedicated marketing functionality there. And there was no one sort of in charge of marketing, as it were. I joined as a consultant, but the emphasis was on the individuals to be putting out content, to be contributing to the company's kind of persona and brand image. So from day dot, we were all tasked with writing, at least one blog a month and trying to make it as relatable and discussing it between ourselves, like what we're going to write about. And you're going to get guys and people who join the business who look at that as a chore. But for me personally, that was one of the bits I enjoyed most. I'm not going to go out and say I'm a copywriter and will write blogs when I've got nothing else to do. But it's something that I think really kind of stoked the fires for me in terms of writing stuff that was relatable, writing stuff that people could have an opinion on, and it started with that. And it was probably a couple of months before I joined that we'd kicked off our first sort of magazine, which was just using that content from the consultants and putting it all together as what was then the trading technologist. So it was literally just a load of copy from a load of recruiters giving an idea of what they were seeing on the front line, as it were. And that's kind of where it started. People would look at us and say, right, these aren't just guys who are calling, these aren't just people calling me up saying, have you got any jobs? Are you looking for a job? It was a genuine kind of consultative side to it, and saying, look, whether you're looking or not, this is what the market's saying. And you kind of you build that community around helping people. So that's something that Toby and the guys had done since there were 4 people in a room, and it just so happened that kind of grew to the point where they needed someone to take over and sort of run that side of the business. And that's where I kind of stepped up, having, I'm happy to admit, not the most successful sort of start to recruitment, but what it did allow me was an idea to see the tough times that consultants can go through, but also kind of the challenges that everyone faces. So I think that kind of relatable side, putting out content, being consistent with it, and being patient, like you start to see that community grow. And because as a business we were always quite niche, like we could cover quite a range of topics within that sort of financial technology or fintech sector, and it would still be relevant to the people we were trying to approach and attract. So I think to start off, it's just about making noise in the first place. So you can't just sit there and not do anything and make a few phone calls and wonder why people aren't coming to you.
Or just go, set up an event and say, come to the pub, and people don't have any reason to come there because they don't feel like, one, they don't know you well enough, but 2, they think, well, why? What am I going to get out of it? That's always the question, isn't it? Like, what's in it for me? As a species, we are naturally selfish in that respect. So people need a reason, and they want a benefit to engage with you for whatever it is.
Yeah, in the immortal words of Eddie Murphy, what have you done for me lately? It's all you can start with. And I know it's something that we were probably going to touch on later, but from a kind of a culture and vision and purpose perspective, you've got to establish that as you grow. Like, there's no point in saying you're going to do all of these amazing things when you don't even know as a business if that's what your specialty is. When you're starting off, I think the best thing anyone could do is just, their slogan should be like, here to help until we know what it is that we're best at helping with. So I think you can start off being a bit more ambiguous and kind of just going, right, what's your problem? Well, I tell you what, I can help with that. Come to this chat because I've got this guy, this woman, this person, all talking about exactly that issue, or read this blog because I was just answering that exact question the other day. And until you start to get that kind of generation of assistance and people seeing you as a genuine expert in the space, then it's
I think that's right. You mentioned it there, that kind of the stuff that needs to be in place before you even think about doing this or trust is probably the biggest thing, is the trust with your audience, isn't it? Candidates and clients, like they know that you're there for them. There's an understanding that there's going to be a benefit for your business. People aren't stupid. There is a reason, but that should always, in my mind, you'll have outcomes that you'd expect at a business level, but it should be a byproduct of adding the value in the first place.
Oh yeah, I mean, you only have to look at your timelines or whatever social media platform you want to go on. You're getting sold to every other post, every other interaction, every other time you speak to anyone, someone is looking to sell to you, whether it be something as kind of obviously sales as recruitment or product, to you've got dentists now who are singing online to attract business. You've got come and see this children's doctor who is the best at kind of administering jabs. It's all about sales. So we've never been in a more kind of sales savvy generation. So why kind of be so blunt about it? Just let me help you. Let me show you why I'm different. The first thing people say in a sales environment is, oh, I'm so different from everyone else. Well, we're not. We know that. We know at the end of the day, someone could find a candidate and place that exact same candidate with half the resources, working out their bedroom. What we can do, which they might not be able to do, is provide the level of assistance, provide the platform, use what we've cultivated, which is our community and audience, to say, to magnify your message, which is something that your one-man band in his bedroom or her bedroom can't say.
Yeah.
So that kind of trust, that openness, that honesty, integrity, it's all basic. It's all written on, 100 different office walls, but there's no point writing it up there if you're not going to follow through with it. I think you've got to be honest, because like you say, it might be the unwritten rule, but everyone knows that there's a benefit to us, for example, for hosting an event, but they've got to see the benefit for them at the same time.
Mm-hmm. What was the tipping point in the Harrington Starr, if you like, the community strategy, if there was one, to take it from blog writing initially, and then to the technology, kind of the magazine, to then start bringing it offline, and you've got like FinTech TV and things. Was that feedback from the people you were working with, or was that a decision of, right, we've got enough kind of momentum now, let's expand to what we're doing?
So I think the kind of the expansion was always in the cards. There was always something that one day we will have an industry magazine, one day we'll be able to attract 300-400 people to an event. I think we actually held an event before we did our first magazine, just to get people in a room, and the first one wasn't the rip roaring success that we hoped it would be. But then it wasn't long before we utilized kind of keynote speakers and kind of the big ticket people to attract others in the room. And I think our biggest audience was 400, just around 400, and we hosted it at one at Ironmonger's Hall, I think it was, up in London. And that was great to see, because it was literally vindication that the work we were putting in was working, and our name was starting to get around there. I think in terms of where we are today, we're still on that journey. Like I still think we can look at what we've got and say, well, we can improve the quality of our video. We can improve studios. We can improve our reach for being brutally honest. But I think that's where, from a marketing perspective, we've always tried to look not where we are now. It's where we want to be, and keep kind of evolving, keep twisting it, because we've never been shy about telling people what we do. There's no secret to everything we do, because we feel like if there are companies out there that can catch up with us and are doing stuff that we're doing now, well, we already want to be looking at the next thing and the thing after that to keep evolving it. So, well,
that's classic marketing, isn't it? It's what is that final outcome or goal we want to do from a business, from a marketing point of view, and what are all the building blocks that we need to get there in purpose. Billy's just asked a question there, going back to the magazine. He's just asked what was the thought process of creating the magazine? I suppose, how did it come about?
So like I said, the first iteration of it was the Trading Technologists, and this was just a platform for us to say, right, here we are. This is what we're finding out with our hundreds of conversations in a day, talking to the people, the nuts and bolts of the industry. We then kind of coupled that with the FinTech Capital, which was if that's the conversations that we were having with candidates on the market, what the conversations we're having with clients and during our canvassing calls, and inviting those clients to contribute articles and their own thought pieces, because there are going to be people out there that maybe don't trust everything that a recruitment consultant might be saying, so get it from the horse's mouth. And that kind of gradually evolved, where we had something like 6 or 7 publications in a year. People were forgetting that we did recruitment as a source. We were kind of turning into a publishing company. So we decided to combine the two and release that 3 times a year as the Financial Technologist. So it kind of evolved into this sort of handbook / business card that we could take to to meetings and say, well, don't take my word for it. Listen, see what the CEO of company X has to say about it, and while you're there, here's a salary survey. Here's what we see in the market. So,
and how many people does it still go? It's still going, isn't it?
Yeah, it's still going.
And how many people does that get fired out to now?
So so with our various kind of ways of working it out, we reckon the audience is about 100,000 people within financial technology. So that
is insane.
A mix of a mailing list, our social media platforms, and then we print out 1,000 or a couple of thousand of each magazine and literally hand deliver them to the desk, which I know we've spoken about before, that kind of old school sort of retro marketing, as it were. But it's so effective these days when people can actually hold something in their hand, and like I say, we'll use it as a business card that we can take to meetings with us. And it's something that we're super proud of. And
you should be. And I think Billy, I think Scott's just answered your question there. It's obviously digital in the modern world, but a thousand go flying off the print presses whenever they need to. Yeah.
And when we can link them to like our events and stuff that we host, there's 100 gone straight away with that, 150 normally. And then we'll mail out to desks around, well, probably not around the city anymore, but through your front door now.
It's just a pile of them just stacking up.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. So now we're inching closer to the old FT, and soon you'll just have the real FT.
Yeah. So and how have you cultivated the community? Have you proactively looked to build it yourself? Has it, like a lot of communities, they kind of grow organically with very little work when they get to a certain size? And then what are the challenges around the management of that?
Yeah. So everything we've done today has been organic, which I think is more a sign of the times we've come from than perhaps the times now. Like we were fortunate. Well, I was fortunate in my position to be working in a time where LinkedIn generally rewarded you for being consistent, and then evolved to generally rewarding you for putting video content out. So we kind of moved with the times a bit in terms of how we would deliver our content. But like I say, we were very conscious of the audience we wanted to attract. We knew that there was a lot of potential ambiguity around what we could do. So we knew that, for example, the magazine, we wanted to land on C-level desks, but also have parts in there that your kind of new person to the industry would benefit from. And that's kind of been something that's taken planning, but also our method of everything coming through our consultants has been quite an easy way to maybe sort that audience
it's
out.
Part of the fabric now of Harrington Starr. If you join as a consultant, your job is to attract candidates, do deals, pull jobs, everything like that, but it's also you play a role in the building of the community.
But I've always used it as especially people who are maybe a little bit newer to recruitment, is that when you first join, you'll just be that consultant from Harrington Starr, but it's about kind of building your personal brand to the point where you'll kind of overtake that. And that's something that we fully, want to happen. We want you to become famous in your space. We want you to kind of, be that celebrity because then on the flip side, you then start taking us with you, if you know what I mean. So we use kind of Harrington Starr as your initial sort of
the vehicle.
And then once you overtake that, then your kind of rise or reflect well on us as well. I think that's kind of something that we've always been conscious of, and making sure that our consultants know the sort of the artillery they've got behind us from a marketing perspective. But it's all well and good putting loads of really good stuff out there and being consistent with it, unless you're kind of directing it in the right place, it's all for nothing. So from if you're starting out building a community and you're in maybe a bit more sort of wider remit than we were, I think you've got to be really careful with how you plan your events and your content, because your community will end up being as ambiguous as the content you put out of it.
So there's a lot of work from your point of view. That how are you planning, like months and months in advance? I suppose with the magazines, you know that quarterly or whatever it is. Bosh. But I can imagine you have to do a lot of planning.
Yeah, it works around those magazines and the events and stuff. They're kind of nice bookends to that quarter or that part of the year. And then it just comes down to training. I think everyone who joins a business or have whether they like it or not will be stuck with me for an hour or two, and we'll be talking about kind of cultivating your own personal audience. And that's where that conversation comes, where eventually you'll become more famous in that space than we are as a business. Yeah, it's about making sure that they're as attentive about their audience as well. Like I was reminded when I was kind of thinking about this conversation, I was reminded of Full Metal Jacket, when they're talking about their rifles, and their community is the same thing. There's loads of communities out there, but that one's got to be yours, and the better maintained and cultivated it is, the better it's going to end up working for you.
Love that. Yeah, love that. And has it helped you in lockdown? Like having this community built up, do you believe? Yeah.
Well, we've actually found that lockdown's kind of really amplified it. So we knew we had kind of people in our space and people that might have contributed to the magazine in the past or we might have interviewed before. But now where we've kind of pivoted a bit to make sure that we're obviously sensitive to the situation. We're not trying to kind of put anyone in an awkward situation. So every video we've done since lockdown has been with a business leader about how they're coping as an individual, but what they've got in place to make sure that everyone's supported. What can other business leaders take from them? And that seems to have gone down really well with those kind of senior leaders within respective businesses. So we're now, as a company, but also Toby, who obviously fronts up a lot of our interviews and stuff, his online persona has kind of taken another leap forward, where he's having really kind of honest, open, frank conversations with CEOs from companies that either we had never really interacted with or we thought might not be on the cards again for the near future. So it's been really, really eye-opening how, out of a bit of adversity, that original kind of mantra that we started off with just trying to help and be there for people, has kind of paid dividends again in this second wave. I think you get that as well when if you cast your mind back 10 years, we were in a pretty not similar situation, but economically pretty dire, and when you've kind of founded from those sort of adverse times, you can fall back on that as a way of sort of building your presence again when times get tough again. I'm gonna invite Shannon Lynch from Signify onto the screen. Hopefully she will get an alert, because she's somebody who I didn't really know before lockdown. She joined the Lonely Marketers Group along with her colleague Elle, and I've been following what she and the team have been doing for Signify during lockdown, and community is standing out there. It worked, Shannon. We got you on.
Yeah, it worked.
So I gave a brief introduction there. If you just want to give flesh it out a little bit about you, your role, and Signify, that'd be great.
Yeah, of course. So obviously at Signify, we specialise in Scala programming, which is like a functional programming language, which obviously makes us quite specialist in that area. So we're coming up to our 4th year now, and I've been with the company for 2 years, just over 2 years. So yeah, definitely where we're specialists, that's really helped us we entered that Scala community, because it's definitely like a community as such. And have been part of the growth and just tried to make ourselves at the forefront. And quite similar to what Scott said, it's all about helping people, giving back, and that's been our motto throughout the whole business, and for all of our marketing and the way that our recruiters work as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd say that's kind of what we aim to do, really.
And that culminated in, what was it, 3 weeks ago? When was it? 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, so 2 weeks ago we held, so every month basically we have our own like Scala in the City meetup. And then 2 weeks ago now we hosted our very first Scala in the City conference. We had like over 800 ticket sales and raised over £10,000 for charity. And we had like 13 speakers from the community. And yeah, it was an amazing event. It went down so well. There was so much interaction on Twitter. So yeah, that came to that from that. It was really great.
Yeah. And do you think so much of the success of that was because of, probably the 4 years work of you playing your role for a couple of years, but the founders and that really being part of the Scala community themselves? Because I suppose in a way a little bit different to Scott's side, where they created content pushing forward. I get the impression that Signify was like, the Scala community is already there. Let's kind of put ourselves into it rather than create something else and then build stuff out of it that way.
Yeah, definitely. So when our founder created Signify, Ryan created Signify, he kind of said, right, let's be a specialist, let's focus on Scala. And there was already the community there, you're right. So we basically from there just aimed to kind of do whatever we could to help the community grow. So that's kind of where the meetups were born from. We also sponsor conferences, which has been a really great tool in helping being part of that community, because it gives you that chance to meet people. And we're trying to do what we can to constantly give back. So yeah, the community was definitely already there, and we've just tried to basically be like the back, almost like trying to kind of replicate that backbone of really pushing behind it and giving people the opportunity to be part of the community and to have opportunities to learn, which has helped grow the community. It's definitely, from what I've seen in the last 2 years, the community has definitely grown. And hopefully from where we've kind of provided a lot of tools, we've been part of that. And I think that now, where we've worked so hard, that a lot of people within that community know our name and know us in the space.
Yeah, and I think, well, they've become, sorry, Scott, they've become advocates for your business as well, haven't they?
Yeah.
I know you had a couple of issues with a couple of trolls after it and stuff like that, but the other community, they rallied round, and they were, they were big in Signify up, they were big in Ryan up and everything, which that's testament to the value that you're adding. Yeah,
definitely. I must admit, that was a really lovely thing. And even with the conference as well, it was just amazing to see everybody really want to be a part of it and just be and be tweeting us and getting their voice heard. It was amazing.
Yeah. Sorry, Scott.
I was just going to say, like, one of the things that we found with sort of interviewing a few people, especially from like the product side, is that that's one of their big concerns, is where those conferences are going to go. There might be a platform for them to hire a stall or get their kind of face out there at that point. What have you found sort of like a solution to that? Is it all going to go online, or those actual kind of conferences in person, like the big tech shows and stuff like that?
Yeah. So we've done quite a lot. We've been part of a lot of conferences, so gone to them. And I'm not sure if you mean it from this point of view, but as in like we use them. We kind of feel like a conference is one of those things we say that we don't see like immediate value out of it. So we'll kind of go along, meet lots of people, and build on those relationships. And then maybe 6 months, maybe in a year down the line, you get someone who says, "Oh, I met you at at Scala Days or Lambda World." And then that happens, and then as well it's helpful in the sense that those companies that are creating the conferences, we're supporting them, so then in turn it kind of replicates when we kind of say like, "Hey, we're doing this, we'd love to get your involvement." They're like, "Sure, yeah." So it's kind of that mutual support, right?
Yeah.
I can see there's going to be a huge shift in events, moving online. I know a lot of traditional companies are creating platforms to host it. Do you know what? Weirdly, it took me back is when I started in recruitment a long time ago in 2004. There was a company called Second Life. It still might exist, which effectively trying to sell you buy a store on Second Life and you'd create a little avatar and walk around and stuff. Obviously technology's come a long way now, but Shannon, I just wanted, because I think it's it should be a part of marketing moving forward now, these virtual events. I know you did yours on Zoom. There's it's unlikely if you did that event offline that you would have got 800 people there. I'm sure you think you could over time, but it's unlikely. But I just want to go through the process of one, deciding that you wanted to do that event, and then get into actually hosting it. What was the kind of the thought process? What did you have to do? What did Elle have to do with the team? How many tears were there? How many sleepless nights were there? Everything like that. So if you could just briefly kind of walk through the organising, hosting, and everything that's happened since would be great.
Yeah, of course. So obviously we'd said a while ago we wanted to do a conference, and we'd said that we wanted to do like an actual physical one. But yeah, they're like another level of organisation. So when we kind of went into lockdown, it was like, right, let's use this opportunity to our advantage. So where our founder said, like, let's create a virtual one. And at the time I thought, like, oh, okay, lovely. Like, let's
You're like, yeah, of course, I'll help.
Yeah. So yeah, we started putting in plans in that one, and yeah, it was me and Ellie that worked alongside each other to try and get it done. I looked at a lot of different platforms, and that was one thing that I would have said was probably my more stressful point, was thinking, where do I host this? What do I do? I felt like I had to do something different than Zoom. But I just reached out to loads of people in the community that had done events or were planning events in the future, and spoke to them. A lot of them said, yeah, just use Zoom, like, you know how to use it, it's reliable. And that's where we kind of decided, like, we'll use Zoom. And I spoke to others and kind of decided on the format. And one person within the community said, like, it's all about engagement. That's where you go to a conference, because you want to be chatting to people. So that's why we ended up having the main webinar room where the talks were happening, and then you can just sit and listen to the talk. But then we had 2 like virtual hallways, and then the speakers would go into there, and then people would be chatting with each other. So you could listen to our talk and then jump into one of those rooms afterwards, and you can ask the speaker questions, or you can just have a little chat. And those got a lot of engagement. There was people having these like passionate discussions, which is great. But throughout the lead up, we just really pushed it hard on social media. We're lucky to have we've worked hard to get a social following on like Twitter and LinkedIn. So we really pushed it hard in there. And yeah, the recruiters, they basically contacted everybody they knew and just said, and to be fair, it worked really well as well for the charity aspect. Obviously, Ryan, our founder, unfortunately lost his mum due to COVID. So it was his way of kind of saying thank you to the healthcare workers for doing it for the charity side. But that kind of, for us, it was great to do that. And then I think it's just people saw that we weren't doing it for like our revenue point of, we weren't doing it from a revenue aspect. We really wanted to just give back in every way they could. So yeah, the guys really pushed it out, and we just did like test calls to make sure that it was all smooth. And to be fair, the day went smoothly. So yeah.
And it wasn't just an hour, was it? How long was it?
It was 12 hours in the end. It started it started at 10 o'clock, and it was off at like 12 and a half. Started at 10 o'clock in the morning, and then we finished up about 10:30 at night. And
was everyone drinking by the time you got to 10:30 at night?
You know what, I thought by the end I'd have like the biggest glass of wine, but I didn't. I literally just like, no, I need my bed. And the next day I was wiped out. It wasn't even like I could enjoy my drink on a Friday. I was just absolutely wiped out.
I can see how COVID's treating you, Glenn, starting drinking at 10 in the morning.
Let's move on. And obviously you've got 800 kind of contacts now from a wider marketing point of view that I assume you've been getting in touch with. Some you'll know, but you just start to engage with them that way as well.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. It's been a great thing for us to build up on the relationships even more, and then people just see that we've provided an event for them.
Yeah. Good. Would you have done anything differently looking back? It sounds like a success, in pretty much ticking every box. But is there anything you would have done differently in hindsight?
I'm not sure actually. I feel like it did go smoothly. I would say that maybe I don't know.
Just too good, Shannon. Just too good.
I know. I'm trying to think what we do. We definitely do something, I think, differently, just so that it wouldn't be like the same thing. I mean, we're looking at now doing obviously where we're part of like the wider functional programming community. We're doing like another functional programming language one next. Maybe I'd say the difficulty is we want to space it out a little bit longer so that people go into the rooms and talk and then come back and see a talk. But it's just, it's not enough hours in the day, unfortunately.
No.
So
Scott,
I'd say that.
Scott, have you because your events over over the years, you've kind of prided yourself on those physical events, getting people into rooms and things. Has there been a discussion at Harrington Starr about potentially shifting them to something like Shannon and the team at Signify have done?
So we've already started hosting some roundtables and stuff like that, and trying to be a bit more kind of selective. I think the challenge you always have with a Zoom call is like everyone's seen on their weekly pub quizzes or whatever they're doing is you get people talking over each other and you're trying to push a discussion, but actually it turns into like incomprehensible babble. So we've tried to target the guys, like I say, consultant led, looking to be as niche as possible within their remit. So James, our MD, has started his tech sales influencer series, which is he'll either have one person or he might have 4 or 5 sales leaders on a Zoom call just discussing it, but really kind of well managed and similar to this, I guess. In terms of the future, we do a lot of work with the Realization Group. It's where our kind of fintech influencers series of events has come with, which is partnered up with the mag. Again, we're just looking to try and keep it smaller for now, and we'll probably do something similar in terms of maybe not look to get 100 people on a call, but get a pre-recorded discussion on it and then invite people into the conversation afterwards. I think that's probably where we'll go for the foreseeable until we're allowed to get people in the same room. Again, socially distant networking to me makes it, it gives me shivers on my spine at the awkwardness of how that will be, like a school disco with buy side on one, sell side on the other, and us in the middle trying to make conversation.
Yeah, waiting for the first people to dance before anyone proposes it. And on the flip side, Shannon, obviously you were thinking about doing like a physical conference, and we don't know, what the world's going to look like. Is it still something that Signify would like to do, or if you go, look, we've nailed this virtual stuff now, let's just do this all the time?
No, I think we definitely want to do like a physical one. Maybe, obviously, as you mentioned, maybe not till everybody feels comfortable doing that, and that'll be, we've already kind of put out there on Twitter, like, what do people feel comfortable doing? Obviously, definitely not this year. So I think until now, like this year, now that we've done that, we want to keep going with the virtual stuff. It's been working really well for us, and if anything, it's probably been even better to kind of be doing it, because people can just hop on and you kind of see that larger audience. So yeah, I think definitely continue with the virtual stuff, but when we can, we'd love to go back into the physical events and continue them, because I think you're right that it's that kind of networking, and it's great to be, although you can be like chatting online, it is great to stand and have a conversation with someone, and I feel like those barriers come down a little bit more when you're standing chatting.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I think Shannon hit the nail on the head as well, though, in that it's got to come from it's got to be audience led. There's no point in trying to shoehorn people into a room before they're ready. I think one of the big things that's come from this whole scenario is that your people know what they want, and if you can use them, you get a lot more kind of engagement and positive feedback than trying to just put something on for the sake of it.
And it's something as marketers, all three of us have probably been we've been banging on for years, and I think there's a sudden realization now is that you go and get the best results from any marketing activity you're doing, whether it's events, building communities, content, is if you're going out and you're asking your audience what they want, what is it that you want to consume. And I think there's a sudden, all right, no, that does actually work, which is great. Cool. We're got about 7 minutes left, so I just wanted to kind of ask both of you if there's people watching, and that there is a fair few watching now, either live or on the replay, and they've been thinking about doing a community. They might have done like a couple of meetups, networking drinks. I joked about it in my intro on LinkedIn about it. Just used to be networking drinks. I used to throw business cards around. If people want to start going on this journey, what would be a couple of things that they can go away and do now, whether that's a conversation with the leadership or from a marketing point of view. I'll start with you, Scott, first.
Yeah. What would my 3 things be? I think the first one would be kind of advocacy.
Mm-hmm.
You want to get buy-in from everyone in the business to use, whatever it is you're looking to start them off with, whether that's like webinar, event, roundtables, or just getting people on a Zoom. You've got to get buy-in from people in the business, and no matter how few of you there are, that voice you'll be surprised at how quickly that voice gets amplified by people that you just come across, you interact with. I think honesty and integrity kind of count as one thing. So that would be like my second point. Like I was saying earlier, people are more sales savvy than ever before. So, going into a conversation saying, look, this is going to benefit me, but it's going to benefit you as well, is going to resonate so much more than trying to trick people into buying your product. It's just people will attend if they see there's a benefit for them. And if you come across as too bolshy, too pushy, you're only going to get that buy-in when they get to know, like, and trust you. And that kind of leads on to the final bit, is that patience. I think, when you take those first 2 points, it can be so easy to kind of start this off and think that, I'm just going to boost this post. I'm going to, click this one bit of amazing content. Where is my crowd? I think you've got to be in it for the long term, and there's those ways will all accelerate it, but unless you've got like that consistent content and consistent message going out, you won't get the audience that you're craving for, and in some cases that might take years, but as long as you're consistent with it, you'll see it at the end of it, and it's having that long-term goal, I think. Yeah,
which is always obviously a challenge within some recruitment businesses. Yeah, Shannon.
I completely agree with what Scott said, to be fair, and probably what I'm going to say probably ties in a little bit as well. I'd say like building relationships from an external point of view, that's something that's been really helpful with us. We found, we built relationships with those who we knew had big names in the community, who were like Scala contributors. So we chat to them and like hype them up on social media as well. So we're kind of showing that we're like part of, helping gain them coverage as well. Building external relationships has been key. And I'd say that now, from where I've been chatting to people for so long now, I can just call them and be like, hey, we're doing this event, or we're doing this, I'd love to have you involved. And you kind of know that you've got that relationship there. Another thing would be like learning. One thing we've done is made everything we're doing is like a learning tool, like a learning platform. And again, that's like what Scott said, like people will want to come because they see that it's a benefit to them. So I'd say go with that learning thing, because it's like us as well. Like if you sort of market an event, you'd be like, sure, yeah, I'll go to that because I know that I'm going to get value out of that. And then the last one would be like feedback. We always find out, like when we're at the physical events, once they've happened, I'll be chatting to people afterwards, be like, so what did you think? Like, what did you think of the talks? And I'll try and find out as much as I can from people on how they enjoyed the event, whether they feel like things could be differently or whether or not it needs to be shorter or longer. So then that way you can like tailor it each time and just let the actual event or whatever platform you're doing to evolve.
Yeah, and ROI as well, isn't it? We spoke about in previous shows. It allows you to tie everything up from a marketing point of view to show what's working, to demonstrate the value upwards in your business and to evolve it. So yeah, that's all really good, and we're pretty much dead on time. I can't thank you kind of both enough for joining me. I think anyone who's watching or listening, if it's on the podcast, is reach out to Scott, go and find out the stuff that Harrington Starr are doing. You might not be able to get a magazine, you might have to give him some details on the website or something, but you've got FinTech TV. There's one really good episode of Recruiter Zone as well. One really good episode of Recruiter Zone where Toby does an interview with some recruitment marketer as well. So go and check that out. And equally, check out all the stuff that Shannon and the Signify team are doing. Depending on when you're listening to this, You've got a podcast coming this week, haven't you, Shannon?
We have, yeah. We've
On
gone into
Friday.
the podcast world, so that should be first episode is going to be this week, and then they're going to be carrying on. So
yeah. And what's the podcast called if people want to check it out?
So it's called Technically Marketing, because we're trying to like incorporate the whole marketing aspect.
See what you've done there.
Yeah, I was really proud of myself for that one. Yeah, so like tech and marketing, we're interviewing different people. So yeah, it's really exciting.
Cool. So if you're not already connected with Scott or Shannon on LinkedIn, go and find them out, and I'm sure they'll be happy to talk around more of this stuff if they haven't covered anything. On Thursday, I'm joined by Amelia Sordell, and we're talking about marketing's role in internal recruitment, in employer branding. Amelia's not short of an opinion or two, so I'm sure that's going to be a great episode. But thank you for all of you who have joined live, and thank you for anyone who's watching on the replay, and I'll speak to you all soon. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Cheers, thank you.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.